1300 2015. It's a Model A, not electric shock. The concern I had when I pulled the seat off and the side panels off was being able to get to the top bolt of the shock. All of this plumbing for the ABS system is in the way of getting to accessing the top bolt. The nut is easy. The nut's on the other side. We'll get to that, but that's easy to access. But this side, the plumbing's in the way. So I'm going to show you how to get to that. The good news is it's possible, and it works out. It's not hard. Just a little clumsy because it's so cramped, but I'll show you how I handled that. Just quickly, I propped the bike up on a center stand, jammed a little bit of wood up under the wheel to hold the weight of the wheel up and off the shock bolts. The first thing you'll want to do is remove the two acorn head nuts that are actually bolts that are right here. There's one on the bottom, and then we're right up here with an 8mm wrench, socket wrench. I'd put a little bit of grease on the wrench to keep the bolt in the wrench, or else you might drop that bolt down into the guts of the bike, and that's exactly what I did, and I spent no less than 40 minutes trying to find that bottom bolt that had fallen down in here, so heed the warning. But anyway, once you take those two bolts out, these clips can be spun around. The top one can be spun around off the plumbing, and the bottom one actually is in two parts. The piece will come right out. You just need to take that black clip, the front of it, right out of there. And what will help you do this is a magnetic extension such as this one that I'm holding right here. If you reach in there with the magnetic extension, you can pull that right out without dropping it. So after you've removed those clips, the plumbing, the flexible tubing will move out of the way, and you can access the top bolt. Not a magnetic, but an extension, like an 8 or 10 inch extension with a 17mm socket. You'll be able to reach in there and reach the top head of the top bolt, the head of the top bolt, and loosen the nut from the other side. The access on the other side is easy. One thing that worked out well is I left this extension on the bolt after I had removed the nut from the other side, and so it was kind of looking like that. And then when I pushed the bolt out with a long screwdriver, the bolt just follows the extension and socket and then just pulls right out. So that worked out very well. The only other thing you need to do is under here is you'll need to remove the bottom bolt and the bolt that holds the dog bones in place. So what I would do is break the torque off of these just so they're loose enough, and then I removed the top bolt. I removed the dog bones next. That swung down. The shock came down with it while it was still attached to while the bottom bolt was still attached to the bike. I removed the hard soft selector up here, and to allow the shock to come out. Then I took this bolt out, and I was able to fish everything out. There is one little clip way up in here. I don't know if that's going to show, but there's a plastic clip that holds the cables to the selector that just needs to be opened up and release that clip, and you'll be all set. If you happen to be installing the TFX shock, as I did, as you're putting the new shock on, you can just fish this reservoir over here and let it hang down while you're putting the shock on, as well as my model has the preload adjuster, so you can just fish this and let it sit on the swing arm. Install your shock in the opposite order of how you removed it, and then bolt this on. This reservoir bolts onto the frame here. There are two bolts right here, very conveniently. It just fits. I had a hard time. The directions show that this fits on here. Well, it does fit on, but I could not get the back bolts on with the reservoir attached to the bracket. So I removed the reservoir from the bracket, attached this, there's a bracket back here. I attached the bracket to the frame, easy enough. And then I attached this reservoir to the bracket. The problem I had was the bolts that were supplied. I couldn't get this back bolt on, or this front back bolt on. So I ended up, I found something kicking around that I had. It was just an 832 stainless steel pan head machine screw. And it had some little lock washers and regular washers and a nut that fit back there. The nut is a little thinner in thickness, and it fit between the acorn, or the hex head screw that's back here, the hex head bolt, and I was able to put this together, and it's actually nice and tight. It's tighter than I thought it would be with a Phillips head, but anyway, it works. That's what I had to do. Maybe you'll have better luck using the original bolts, but if you don't, that little trick works. Maybe I'll show you that bolt right at the end just to get you a better picture in case you run into the same problem. This is the machine screw that I ended up using to attach the reservoir to the bracket. So it looks like about an inch long, 1032 panhead Phillips machine bolt with the small washer, lock washer, and nut. I used a bunch of, 3 or 4 or 5 lock washers, then 3 or 4 or 5 regular flat washers, and that's what I was able to use to attach that reservoir to the bracket. Bolting on the back spring preload adjuster is very straightforward. It comes on a bracket. You remove these 2 bolts, put the bracket on, put the bolts back on, and that's about it. So the good news is that removing the shock from the FJR 2015 or the Generation 3 FJRs, getting to the shock is actually easier than it appears at first sight, first look. And that's it. Good luck.